Hello, and thank you for listening to the Testing the Spirits podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about what you should do if your church is drifting in the wrong direction. I'm actually going to respond to an email that I received from a couple in California, but I'm sure this applies to several people watching, or if it doesn't apply to what you're going through right now, maybe you went through it in the past, or unfortunately, some of you are probably going to face this in the future. So I've received letters and emails like this before, where a new pastor comes in, or maybe it's an older pastor who's been around for a while, but his theology is in flux. But a pastor wants to impose the purpose-driven agenda upon his church, or Andy Stanley style of leadership. So a lot of people have gone through this. Like I said, a lot of people probably will go through this in the future, so hopefully this podcast will be helpful. So let me read the email, and then I'll respond. Justin writes, "Good evening, Pastor Grant. My son and I watch your videos and are big supporters of your channel. We reside in California, and we've been attending a Reformed church out here. Our pastor recently stated that he wants to turn to contemporary music using Hillsong in Bethel. This church has only been singing hymns, which we love. The elders of the church have already expressed that they don't want to go in this direction. My son and I recently had a conversation with the pastor, and he basically called us out for being judgmental. My son had said it goes against his conscience to sing this music, and the pastor responded, 'Just don't sing it then. We want your opinion on it and see what you think.'" Okay, so first of all, I appreciate the question. I'm sorry that you're going through this. I know it has to be difficult, especially if you've been at this church for quite some time. But let me just say this. If the elders oppose this decision and the pastor is receiving, complaints or concerns from the congregation, if the elders are against it, the debate should end right there. I don't know what style of church government you have, but normally a church that has elders, for example, in 1 Peter chapter 5, you can also look at Titus chapter 1, it's generally accepted that the term elder and pastor are used synonymously. So the point is, if your church has elders, and if they're biblical elders, then their vote should count just as much as the pastor. So the pastor might be seen in an elder-led church. He might be seen as the first among equals. He might be the leader in that sense. But if the elders oppose this decision, then that should be the end of the story. So if the pastor is going to go ahead anyways and push this agenda with the elders disagreeing, that just tells you that your church leadership structure is completely broken. And really, this is probably just the tip of the iceberg as far as problems go. In other words, the problems are only going to escalate from here. Now, at the same time, I feel like I should give this disclaimer. I'm 3,000 miles away. I don't know all the facts, so I can't really tell you what you should do, but I can tell you what I would do based on the information. And when people ask me something, I typically tell them, yes, go and talk to your pastor. I think that's the right thing to do. But you already did that, and he dismissed your concerns and actually, in a sense, attacked you by calling you judgmental. I don't know exactly what he said, but yeah, this is concerning. Again, I'm sorry you're going through this. But the way I see it, there are two issues here. First, the church is going from traditional to contemporary. But it's not just contemporary. It's the Bethel Hillsong style of contemporary. Second, the second problem, the pastor seems to equate discernment with being judgmental. Of course, the pastor, by calling you and your son judgmental, that in and of itself is a judgment, but that's, the double standard you often get from people like that. So these are the two issues, but really, they are tied together, that and the elder thing, but they're tied together as a general lack of discernment. Okay, so if this was all it was, let's say your church was only moving away from the piano and playing hymns in favor of a praise team singing newer music, if that's all it was, I would say wait it out, see what happens. Maybe this isn't your preference. It's not my preference, but we should not be quick to leave a church. And I would not advocate for separation based on that alone. But the fact that the pastor wants to play Bethel and Hillsong, and the fact that he has heard the opposition and dismissed it, that people who disagree are just, judgmental Pharisees or something like that, that and defying the elders, this would be a deal breaker for me. Now, at the same time, listen, like I said, I don't have all the facts, but let's say, on the other hand, if this was a split decision with the elder board, let's say it was 4-3, and then your pastor said to you, listen, I know Bethel is problematic. I don't agree with Hillsong and that whole movement. I understand your concerns, but the music, we evaluated the lyrics, and we feel like the songs we're choosing, the lyrics, they glorify God, so we're going to sing it anyways. I would still disagree with singing Bethel and Hillsong, but at least if he said something like that, he would show some consideration, and he would show that he understands the issues, right? And then I would say maybe pray on it and see what happens. But obviously, that's not the situation you're describing. And there are other considerations, like, are there other good churches in the area? If you leave, can you go somewhere else? Are there other good churches? Are there other options? What is your pastor preaching? That can be a tricky thing. Does he preach the whole counsel of God? I highly doubt it if he's going in a Bethel Hillsong kind of direction. But, I do know of churches that have a solid message that, for whatever reason, they sing Bethel. Again, I disagree with that. But the situation you describe, going against the elders, responding like you're just being judgmental, this is not good. So, to give my answer, for myself, I'm not telling you what to do because I'm not in a position to do that. I don't feel like I'm in a position to do that normally. I don't do that. But what I would say, based on the info, here's what I would do. I would leave. Okay, I would leave. Because even though someone's going to say that this is just superficial, it's style, it doesn't matter that much, old music versus new music. No, it's bigger than that. How we apply God's word and how we live it out is just as important, if not more so, than whatever you say or claim you believe. I don't know what this pastor is preaching or what he believes, what his doctrine is, but you cannot separate doctrine from practice. So if he's defying the elders, going against the elders in his church, if he's changing the music and the style of the church, especially for Bethel music, I'm just saying that 9 times out of 10, it's going to affect the doctrine of the church and what's coming from the pulpit. I suspect it already has affected that, but this is my advice. If this ends up happening, if his agenda is pushed through, I personally would leave. Now, if you really love the church and you want to keep praying, maybe you can wait and see. Maybe the elders will take a stand. I don't know. It doesn't sound like this has happened yet. So yeah, pray about it, wait and see. Maybe talk to one of the other elders. Speak. Don't run down the pastor. Not that you would, but, make sure you're speaking respectfully. Because if you say something, out of line, then they can use that again. You don't want to do that. But yeah, you could wait and see. And in 6 months from now, who knows? Maybe things would be different. But yeah, if the pastor is going to go against the elders, and if he does push this agenda anyway, I would definitely leave the church. So thanks for the question, and I do commend you for exercising discernment. This is one of the major problems in the church today, in churches today, people who either lack discernment or they have it, they're just not willing to speak up. So good job, keep testing the spirits, and I sincerely hope that things work out. I'm sure they will in one way or another. So thanks for listening, and until next time, may the Lord be with you, and have a great day.